Well, hello everyone. My name is Vicky Wawerchek. I am the exhibits curator at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium here in San Pedro. I am a board member of CAM and I'm also a member of the CAM Programs Committee. And I'm here to go over some housekeeping items before we get started. First things first, we are recording this webinar and it will be posted on CAM's YouTube following the presentation for the enjoyment of the greater CAM community and the public. You will be emailed a link to view the recording once it's ready for distribution. Captioning is available for anybody via Zoom if requested, and to request that, please email engagement@calmuseums.org. During the presentation, please use the Q&A function to send your questions to the presenters throughout the session. Questions are going to be addressed at the end of the presentation. The chat box feature is going to be closed for the presentation, but it will be open at the very end during the Q&A portion. And at any time during this session, if you have any technical issues, please email engagement@calmuseums.org and we will do our best to address those. As we begin this event, we'd like to acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of our various regions. California is home to over 150 tribes, and an acknowledgement is just one step towards working with Native communities to build meaningful relationships. Museums and many institutions were founded upon purposeful exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples and still benefit from settler colonialism and associated harms. CAM is committed to moving beyond land acknowledgements and into action. We encourage all participants to learn about the land they live and work on, to build relationships with local Native communities, and to find tangible ways to celebrate, support, and advocate alongside them. We invite you to learn more about the original stewards of your areas. Some helpful, though not definitive, resources include the State of California Native American Heritage Commission and the Native Land Digital, and links for both of those resources are going to be available in the chat, so please take a look at those. And I live and work on the traditional territory of the Tongva peoples. Our Lunch and Learn session today is Natural HERstory, Drag, Science, and Queer Joy in Bloom. And I do have to say, I attended this session at the CAM conference, and it was so incredibly meaningful. It had such a huge impact on me, and there was like discovery, self-discovery happening in real time. It was such a wonderful presentation, and I'm sure today is going to be no different. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our speakers for their introductions now, and thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Vicki. Appreciate that introduction. And hello, everyone. Hello, CAM members and everybody joining us, and to our panelists. Welcome to Drag HERstory, Natural HERstory, and our session today. My name is Milena Acosta. I'm the Associate Director of Community Engagement at the Natural History Museums of Los Angeles County. I'm joined by the incredible team that made this technical and creative spectacle possible. Panelists, I'd love for you to please introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, your title, and your organization. And maybe in the spirit of our show and the energy that was brought to it, maybe like one word vibe of what brought you to the project, or what, thinking back onto the project, what you remember. So Pickle, I'm going to start with you. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself, since you're bringing the glam today? I don't know if that's the vibe, but you did it.
It's Thursday. My name is Pickle. I am a drag queen in Los Angeles. I also run an organization called Drag Arts Lab, which is focused on drag in the public sector and advancing the art of drag in LA County. And it was such a pleasure to work with and continue to work with the Natural History Museum on this project. So I think that the vibe coming into it is now I feel like I'm gonna go with sparkle.
Oh, I love that.
I was like searching for a deep word and came up with sparkle. So there you go.
You could sparkle deeply. I mean, I think your inner spark, the outer spark of the glitter of your top. I mean, all the things.
Yeah,
So
let's go with
great.
that.
Awesome. Jackie, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hi all. My name is Jackie Estrada. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a program manager for community engagement here at the Natural History Museums of Los Angeles County. The vibe that I was feeling is just like really creative in this
Ah,
process. There's so much happening and so much going on.
love that. Yeah, and I think co-conspirator vibe too was your jam. T, let's have you go next.
Hi, I'm T. Conde. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the theater technical supervisor for NHM. And I came into this process, I think I'll use two words, with excitement and curiosity.
Love that. Thank you. And last but not least, Anya.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I'm Anya Hunter, and I'm the Senior Manager of Interpretation Education at the Natural History Museum and Tarpus Museum. I use she, they pronouns, and like T, I'm going to use two words and say that the vibe that I felt going into this project was expressiveness and progress on multiple levels.
Love that. I'll two-word you two of shared authority, and we can dive into that as we go on. Now, I know a lot of you that are here may or may not have ever seen the show that we're going to reference, and so we thought we would start too with giving you a little bit of context on what this thing is that we are talking about. So, Pride and Bloom is the program that we put on here at the Natural History Museum. And to give you an understanding, we've stitched together, and by we I mean Pickle, have stitched together a beautiful little clip to give you context of what the community experienced twice now, because we have done Pride and Bloom here at NHM two times, last year and this past June, to really understand what the show looked like. So I'm going to hit play here, and you're going to get a little Pride and Bloom.
And is the fastest creature on earth. Back in Jurassic, they called me a hack. The critics were vicious and ripped up my act. But nature chose me to dig through time. Are fossils bones? No, they're rocks and minerals. The critics thought I was done. Well, they're all dead. Yeah, it's me that survives. Long-necked charisma in no short supply. No me queda más que perderme en un abismo de tristeza y lágrimas. The beauty of our combo is catching near and far. The purpose of our dance, though, is to teach you who we are. I'm a centipede, I run fast to catch my prey. Each segment has two legs, you see, but I climb out of the tray. Guiding yourself all the pieces that made the strangeness that they have been fighting is often the path worth the lighting. Your kindness is strange for the crying. Evolution starts from within.
Whew. I kind of get chills and excited every time I see it all over again and that soundtrack on there. So that's a little bit about what essentially was put together as part of Pride and Bloom. I wanted to give everybody just a little bit of context of what happens here also at the Natural History Museum. We have a strategic goal. Our North Star is being of a museum of, for, and with Los Angeles, but it's really for us not just a slogan, it's an operational process here where we engage, listen, and co-create with communities. This is our definition of community engagement here at the Natural History Museum. Listening is a strategic asset for us. We actually, between 2019 and 2025, and actually continuing on to 26, but during that time, we've conducted over 24 different community conversations. And we asked one question of what kind of community do you want? So essentially, the path to Pride was listening to community, and they heard us, we heard them loud and clear. They want a safe, supported, well-represented community, and inclusivity was at the top of that. So the important part here to think about is Pride in Bloom isn't just booking a queen for June. It's a commitment and it's a relationship that we did. So we really wanted to make sure that the museum had a welcoming space throughout, just past June. So those conversations intimately with some partners really helped shape that. Internal listening was a big part of that. Our staff self-identifies within this community. And within that, they said, we should have something here at the museum that represents our community. And that's how Queer Family Day was born in 2022. But we also do the listening externally with partners such as friends over at the LA LGBTQ Center, with Trans Lounge. And essentially they told us is they want a accepting and equitable society where people feel seen. And so we did that work internally. We had training with staff. We have pronoun pins here at the museum. We proudly wear our progress flags, and we updated and fly a progress flag outside of the museum, which led us to the first time we connected with Pickle over Queer Family Day. We had Drag Queen Story Hour here, and just a day full of fun and excitement. So really the important part here is we continued it. We did it again in 2023 over at the La Brea Tar Pits, had Pickle again and back, and just were like, what great fun it was the first time. Let's do it all over again. So similarly here at the museum, also out in the community, our friends at different communities were like, let's go hiking. You have an expertise in that. Our community loves being outdoors. And so we found welcoming places to go out and go hiking together and in community, especially with Trans Lounge, which is a really strong partner of ours. And then came the opening of our Welcome Center. And this is where things really converge, where we invited all of our partners to come out, celebrate this new Welcome Center. And amongst, obviously, we were going to invite Pickle. And at this point, Pickle had put together Drag Arts Lab. And we had a conversation of, hey, we have got this really great new theater. What could we do with it? And that was the origin of where we got to Natural HERstory. And we moved into this new step of doing this work here. So there was a path to Pride in Bloom, and the building of it. I'm not going to talk all about it myself. I want the team here to talk about it. So I zipped through those slides. And then I wanted to give us a chance to talk about what happened here and what the path was. Team panelists, if you want me to go forward or flip back to a picture, you know what's on the deck. You just let me know. But just to show you that there were a lot of teams involved in this that got us to that stage of activating our theater. It was the first big kind of performance that happened in here, and T can speak towards that as well. And really was able to bring together so many different aspects of art, creativity, also the technical expertise of our tech team to put on this beautiful show, and our museum educators as well that were part of it. So with that, I am going to ask the first question. And Pickle, maybe I'll start with you here. You have said in the past, talking about creative perspective and science interpretation and those things colliding. You had said that in this partnership, the creative team kind of centered on the museum's material. And while you were focused on the science and staying true to that, we on the other side were focused on we need to step aside, right, and find a way for those two things to meet in the middle, and let creativity have its place and also the science. So, how did that meeting in the middle to create this show really kind of help your collaborators of kind of writing the show and building the show come together so actual science was happening in partnership with art?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things about this project, as I've said many times, is that it really was a convergence between the institute, like the Natural History Museum, and then the Art of Drag, and like my creative collaborators, and the musicians and the drag performers. I mean, we really were starting from scratch in terms of like, what are we going to do? And I think I love that T's word was curiosity, because I think that that was such a driving force of the creative process for me. I think that, you know, when it was sort of like, well, let's do a drag show, and I really wanted to do a drag show that was in conversation with the materials in the museum. I've worked with museums before, and I just think that it's so much more powerful when you're really in it, you know, and you're really like teaching about it, and it's an educational opportunity. So we kind of were just like, well, let's like do this show. But then the thing is that there aren't really like, it's like, well, how do we do that? You know, like we're just gonna have to write it ourselves, right? Like there doesn't exist a drag, well, now there exists a drag show like with like music about bugs, but like it wasn't really out there. So we had to go, and that was where the museum, that support was so valuable in like not like just like resources to like build the materials or do whatever. It was really the people being available and being like connecting with Anya and setting up times for me to come in and meet the people who like mind the birds like and mind the fossils, and learning all about that and those details that like, there's such a fond memory of like being with, gosh, I don't remember what Nathan's title is, the paleontology.
He's the head of the Dinosaur Institute
Yeah,
here.
like
He's our head curator.
the head curator of the Dino Institute, and like bringing him swatches and being like, well, which of these colors, like obviously we're not like replicating exactly what fossils look like, but like to be able to get his input on that, and to learn like little fun facts that there's still like little tidbits from like talking with those educators and those department heads that I'm like, okay, eventually we're going to integrate that. Like finding out that like, you know, I was playing Natalie, this Diplodocus, and it's like him telling us about the Diplodocus tails and how they would like whip around and like hit things. We're still like, okay, when we like, our next thing is like, we got to make that tail, you know, it's like, and maybe we didn't do it this year, but we're going to do it in the future, and just continuing. And I think Carrie, for me with my collaborators, you know, they were like, you know, I think it was my enthusiasm and having all that information, doing that footwork, that then they started getting enthusiastic. And like in the rehearsal room, I think, and the writing room, because I work closely with the musicians and we write together, it was really about staying true to that North Star of like, this is about the science, and like pushing back and never letting it get too far away from that, that then eventually they were enthusiastic about it as well, and it's become something that they own, to the point where like what I love about this project too is that it continues to grow, it continues to change. We're still working on the material, we're still tooling with it, we're still thinking about recording it as like an album, and so I'm continuing those conversations. And now my collaborators are like arguing with me about like, well, no, I think that Natalie that would say this or like do this, and I'm like, I this all but like there's like a beauty to that where it's like the ownership of this has become more widespread, where I'm sort of like, of course my impulse is to be like, well, I invented this character, so like I like I don't know, but then the fact that I didn't, like, you know, it's shared ownership of this thing that is kind of, I mean, it's frustrating in the room, but like it's like kind of beautiful that these people these like, this trombone player is like arguing with me about like the arrangements, because it's like I set out to get into the weeds, and now it's like we're in the weeds, and this is what it feels like to be in the weeds. And it's really, it just continues to really nourish me creatively. And I think that if I had not approached the project with that level of curiosity and investment in the collections themselves, and if the museum hadn't met me there with that shared enthusiasm, then we couldn't have gotten to this point of like, now we have this material that feels so, it feels so real and it feels so thorough. It's not just like a pop song that already exists that like we're dressed as butterflies. It's like very, I think it like really gets into it.
And I think you can sense that based off of, the number of times that you were here. You were saying about like setting up time. We ended up getting you a membership because it was like, I mean, Pickle just lives here now. Like, let's just get like you eliminate the barrier of having to ask somebody for a ticket. Like you're just here. And I think that warmth behind that. I wanted just a quick follow up. Like if you had, there's folks listening that maybe would want to partner with their local community on something like this. What's like a ground rule that maybe you would give the audience, perhaps for maybe their first creative meeting with, their non-museum partner, to ensure that flavor of, drag in this instance and the facts of the science, that they can survive in partnership?
Yeah, it's such a great question. It's always going to be different based on, because like this project would have looked different if it was a different artist and like a different sort of thing. But I think that what I can say is what kept me really engaged was the enthusiasm for the connection to the collections. I think sometimes like I have partnered with institutions where they're like, we're really not interested in like going too deep. Like, they don't say that, but it's like you get the vibe that it's like, we want to, which is fine. Like, they want drag there, but it's just not their priority to like really go in deep. And like, I think that being open and not underestimating people's capacity to engage with that material, and also challenging them to do that. I think that part of the first step is being like, hey, we want this to be a deeper engagement, or like we want the work to be in conversation with the collections. How can we make that happen, and what do we need to do, like, and what is possible and what's not, because like obviously also different artists are going to have different capacities and different like alignments with their interests. But I would venture to guess that like, there is an artist in every community who is the right fit for the collaboration that you want. And I think as an institution, front loading that research and not just sort of being like, okay, well, this is the first drag performer I'm interacting with, so like let's go with that. But like really like asking like, who is already doing stuff like this, who writes music, or who does, like really investigating the community and what artists are in there, because they might not be the most famous or popular artist in your community, but they might be the right one for the collaboration that you have in mind, and they might be the ones with that work ethic and with that drive.
Yeah, that's such a great way to kind of encapsulate of like, look around, right? Be open to it. And because that initial meeting can turn into something more. And Jackie, I wanted to shift to you to see if you wanted to add to that, because I think, building this wasn't just a one-off event, right? Like the relationship starts in your kind of perspective of shared authority and internal advocacy for what we wanted to do. How did that long-term relationship building with Pickle and Drag Arts Lab create that kind of shared agency necessary to make the museum feel really relevant to our partners?
So I think that one thing that was really important to note is that, again, just to reflect on what you've mentioned before, this wasn't just our first like interaction with Pickle. The Queer Family Days were a really great stepping point to learn about how like to have a window into the work that Pickle does. And then when Pickle approached with Drag Arts Lab, like to know that there was a real like interest. It was the right fit, as you were like talking about, the right fit for our Commons opening. And it was just really great to have.
You lost your audio there.
I did lose my audio. You can hear me now?
Yes.
And it was just a really a great fit for creating the more. Because of the interactions and the relationships that we had and created before, Pickle was aware of what our capacity was, of what Drag Arts Lab was capable of, and the idea of creating a drag persona of Natalie was just like the right the right fit. Like I it just made sense to introduce Pickle to Dr. Nate Smith and to connect Pickle once the idea came of the natural HERstory, to connect Pickle with our museum educators who were so excited about this through Anya, and then all of our research and collections, and to create something that they were so excited about. Like the main goal of community engagement is not to get the museum out there, it's always to decenter the museum. But because this was the aspiration of our community partner, there was that shared agency they had in the project of these are the parts of your collections that we really want to highlight and connect to. These are the things that we connect to. And this is how we want to do it.
I love that. Yeah. And the connecting of the educators, and also to like the place where this thing is going to land, to T and the team, right? The technical spectacle and navigating the limits of this new space. So I wanted T to bring into this, and then Anya will talk a little bit about the connection with the educators, and also panel, if anybody wants to jump in and yes and any of this, like feel free to have this conversation. So T, we're talking this new theater recently built, full band, spotlights coming, quick changes, right, in this theater. What was that internal learning curve for your team to teach this as or treat this as a moment of theatrical growth opportunity rather than just like a logistical hurdle, that framing? How did you work through that part for your team?
Yeah, thank you. I think my team was probably the last team that joined this project. And I think it was really exciting. One of the things that was fun for my team was that we got a lot of creative freedom. And just because of the nature of Pickle and Drag Arts Lab as a whole, that whole team came in and said, yes, we're very excited and you can do anything. It wasn't anything, but it was very generous in terms of you can play around with lights, you can play around with what we can do in the space and movement and color, which was really fun. I think a lot of the programming that we had done up until that point had been more lecture focused, and our lectures tend to be a little bit more straightforward, a little bit more clean cut. And this production was a chance for us to really sort of stretch and grow. Um, and the other thing that was really nice was because we had a little bit of planning and time, we were able to have, I don't remember, I think maybe we had 2 or 3 rehearsals beforehand where we could come in and then adjust things. And so we'd build a light look and say, how does this look? How does this feel? And then sort of adjust with that. The other thing that was technically complicated, but I think ultimately was very fun, was Pickle said, I want a spotlight. And so she found somebody from the community who could operate a spotlight, and I think she just purchased a spotlight right off from that budget, and we plugged it in up in the catwalk, and we're very fortunate to have this new theater space. And so we had a little bit of space, we had a little bit of room and a little bit of time. We were able to use those tools to kind of stretch and grow. So I think it was a really great opportunity, and it was a stretch, but I think we approached it very much as an opportunity, as a chance to try something new and see where we could take it. And I think the second year we did it was, it was a little bit pared down and a little bit more straightforward and went up very, very quickly. But the first time was very much a space to explore and to try new things and see how far we could reach, and then figure out what we could package this into to be something that could reach the audiences and look really fun and nice.
That's great. Yeah, Pickle, from your perspective of that, walking into a theater that hadn't really been used in this way and you could explore, I imagine that's different, the same of like the other spaces where performance happens. I imagine performance can happen anywhere, right? But just wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like really blown away by the flexibility of the technical crew and their willingness. I mean, the first time that I performed with like musicians was a few years ago in like a smaller space at like kind of a cabaret theater. And it was such a learning curve. And the technical person there was like not having it. He was like, no, like we're not, like it was such a no kind of environment, which is fine. And really taught me to remember that like we're not just like it's not just about us. It's like this is someone's space and this is managed by someone and this is someone's baby. And like, I didn't say that to like, oh, that guy was like a stick in the mud. It really was a valuable lesson where he was like, no, like this is like, this isn't just a place where you come and plop down and do whatever you want. So like I think that that really changed the way I enter spaces. And I think being more like, well, what is like, obviously this is the big vision and like, it's like, but how far are you willing to stretch? Like, what are the limitations? And being really clear with like, my collaborators. I mean, now with like them on the stage, I'm really futzy where I'm like, oh, don't go out there like that. Like, don't like put that back in the thing. Like, don't walk on this, like, because it becomes this shared space. And like, I think creatively obviously like if we had like a 6-month rehearsal period and like big budget like planning period and designers and all these things, then we would be like really fastidious about like certain things. But I think in projects like this, it's more valuable to like not get caught up in like, oh, I want like this section to be green, and more just like, what do you think? Like I don't know better than a lighting designer like how to light a scenario or like a musical number. And it's like when you don't have like the time or the resources, it's like, why not just be more flexible and be like, well, what do you think? And like, but also challenge them to do something, like, be like, come up with something, like be a part of that process. And everyone was so like enthusiastic and kind, and like I could tell that they were like troubleshooting some things. And like I think just like it was so meaningful because it's like I know that this is a space that like they're all tasked with like stewarding and taking care of. And so it was really special to be a part of that and a lot of fun.
That's great. Yeah, you also made me think about just obviously there's folks that might be listening to this that they don't have a theater. To your point, like this can happen anywhere. And T, I wanted to ask you, like for folks here from smaller institutions, we don't have that. We don't have a theater, but we love this idea. Like we want to do this. How can they use maybe non-theatrical spaces to create a sense of spectacle without a massive budget? Because I can imagine that that's maybe the situation for most folks that might be on the call.
Yeah, so our theater only opened in 2024. And I think, Milena, you had a photo in the slides on the smaller stage. So prior to the opening, do you have the one with Craig and the T-Rex on the little
Oh,
stage in the
yeah.
Mammal Hall?
I think
So it's early.
oh,
I think it's early in
there
your
it is.
deck.
It might be this one here
Yes,
next
I
to
think you had
Pickle.
another slide with it big, but that's perfect.
Oh,
So
well,
one of the things that we did actually before I started working at the museum was we built this smaller stage, and this is actually a permanent fixture um, in the mammal halls. You can kind of see behind sort of in the background there. This is just out in our main mammal hall, and we hung theatrical lights from the it's actually track lighting that we have for the normal exhibits, but we hung additional fixtures specifically for performance. And so for a number of years, I want to say 14, those puppets were performing in that space, and that was our main space to do things. And so there are a lot of things you can do to transform other spaces into theatrical space. I think the main thing is trying to see what options you have and what you can work with. I think one of the logistical concerns was, well, how does this um, take away time from the exhibit just being open? And so it's just a larger discussion that needs to be had. But you can absolutely do performance in your halls, or if you have outdoor space, there's a lot of flexibility there. And we actually still do a number of different arts outreach things in other areas of our museum, not just in the theater. So yeah, I think get creative and talk to your community, talk to your other teams, maybe the exhibits teams, maybe the education teams, and see what you can do. But we've done both. We've done quite a bit of both.
I love that perspective of like, what can we do versus focusing on the limitations that are perceivably very obvious, right? Like, we can try, we could pilot, use that word pilot. That's a special one for anybody who is scared about what you might be trying. Well, we're just going to pilot it, and it doesn't have to be forever. And then they're going to love it, and then it's going to happen. So I think that's definitely the spirit of like, what can we do comes definitely from the museum educators team. And that was I'm going to raise my hand because I could do a lot to support this is what ended up happening. But Anya, you had noted in the past that our educators, it was a major shift for them. They were the primary script writers for a lot of our educational programs. And they went from that to being supportive of performers, like Pickle, who was being inspired by, and Pickle, if there's anything for you to add in here too, feel free. But how did you ensure, Anya, that your team, that the science stayed centered while they shifted into that facilitator role, like the guide on the side?
Yeah, thank you. It was really fun to help guide the museum educators to collaborate with Pickle and Drag Arts Lab and support their exploration of the collections and provide information to help bolster Pickle's script writing. And I think it was a journey for them to shift. I think originally when they met with Pickle, they imagined like, oh, I'm just going to give a lot of information, and then like, well, something will happen, and they got so excited and they dumped on information, and then they realized, no, my role is I'm the hype person, I'm the scientific guardrails, and I'm here for shared authority and shared enthusiasm. And once they decentered themselves, everything just came together really organically, where once they decentered themselves as the scriptwriters, they realized that Pickle and all of the queens that they were working with had an expertise in storytelling, and their medium was just very different. And so they were there to support with content and to help listen to the inspiration that they were hearing and provide just relevant tidbits instead of like this big like lecture program. And I think the museum educators really said that they enjoyed taking a step back and getting to be sort of like the inspiration and the support in a way that they don't typically get to be. Typically, they're taking inspiration and funneling it out. And in this case, they were instead taking enthusiasm and sharing information and creating that inspiration with Pickle. And I want to just touch on how Pickle mentioned, in addition to shared authority, there was shared enthusiasm, and that the work happened in conversation, because what the museum educators ended up doing was creating these interactive tables about the Natural HERstory show. And they took conversations with Pickle of the various drafts of the show and what information they supplied that like made the final cut. And they used that story of how Pickle created the show to make their table. Their table had fossils that Pickle saw in the behind the scenes tours. It had swaths of costuming that didn't make it into the final costume. It had pictures along the way. And so their table was really about the making of the show rather than information. And this is this is a costume in these slides that didn't make it into the show as the original Archaeopteryx costume. And this sort of shared enthusiasm of hearing what made the cut and didn't also create a lot of play in our office where we took a lot of ownership around being part of the show. And this costume still lives in our office and is actually worn when people are having bad days and need to feel powerful. But yeah, so the team really enjoyed taking a step back and highlighting somebody else's creativity and then scripting their own table around somebody else's creativity that they shared and collaborating with and sharing the story of the drafts of the show. So it was really wonderful. I can keep going a little bit and say like the team,
go ahead.
My team of educators, they really highly identify with the LGBTQI plus community. And one of the things that was most remarkable for me as their manager, watching them have this collaboration with Pickle and decentering their career identity, was that they got to be empowered to center their personal identity. And many of them said that they felt like their identities of being a museum educator and a queer individual would never connect, and that those were very separate spaces. And to see them mesh like this meant the world to them and made them feel so much more connected to the museum and represented, and like they could take up space. And that really percolated beyond my team, where people across the museum were coming up to me and saying, thank you so much for like having your team help to highlight, our queer identity in my community. And I see myself here, and in a fun, accessible way. That was a more inclusive event than they had seen previously working in museum spaces. So yeah, I just think it was really wonderful for the team to see themselves in the museum and see their ability to bring the museum into the work for the community.
That's so great. I love that even just something as simple as keeping that costume, and I don't know, Pickle, if you even knew that happened.
I did. I was so thrilled. And yeah, just to jump off of that, like they were so. I still think of the educators and all that. I mean, we're always like the script is still always changing and still hasn't like I've never like it's always like evolving. And I just love that when we're like rehearsing in the space, there'll always be like someone there, like an educator or something, and we can just stop and turn and be like, well, what like get information in real time from people, like who here knows the most about birds, or like as we like write and continue to evolve. I mean, and Lisa, who was like I visited with her in her bug like cavern with all the bugs like early on, and she was really like, I loved that interaction because she was talking about how like people get emotional when they're like touching tarantula. I mean, that was the first time that I touched a tarantula, and I used to be so scared of spiders, and I was like having a moment in this bug cavern with Lisa because it was so, I was like, well, I need to touch this tarantula because I need to like walk the walk and not like be scared of bugs while we're writing the show. And it was like emotional. She was talking about how people get emotional, and that like might have been just an aside, but it opened my eyes to how like science can be emotional, and it is so human. And like, so even her just saying that was like very influential on how we like continued to shape the material, and thought like, well, a fact can be emotional. Like, it doesn't just have to be like, okay, this is the storytelling part, and now we're going to do like the facts. Like the facts can be what makes us emotional. Like the information is what can be profound instead of like sticking a cliche in there. Like, let's just like stick a fact. And and it was like, we were like a good moment, I think, to highlight was when I was like, okay, asking her questions about myriapods, because we have this song, the Myriapod Mambo, and there's this lyric where like they're talking about what they have in common, and they're like, we both are full of poison, so don't you take a bite. And she was like, well, and like whatever that whatever they're like, well, she's like, it's technically not poison if it's like just inside of it, it would be. And so and I was like, okay, well, you need to help us come up with a good word, because like I don't want to cut that line. Like, so we were like, and we landed on toxins. She was like, toxins would be right. And it was just like, so I was like, this is so cool. Like, this is what I love about songwriting and education, because it's like you can bang your head all day against the wall wondering what you should write about, or you can like go out there and like problem solve in real time with other people and their interests. And it was just such a beautiful moment. It's still in the song, like, and she like gave us toxins, and now it's accurate.
I love that. Yeah, there's so much wrapped into those kind of small moments, like the unintended outcomes, right? Of being able to have access to that expertise and those guides. I want to move us into kind of like the hot tips of this, so we can have time for folks that might have questions. And obviously, if anybody does have a question, we're going to open things up so that you can ask that. But if you're starting to think about those things, please feel free to start thinking about that. I'm going to take us into hot tips for co-creation, and give everybody a chance to maybe read the ones that you were inspired by. So I'm going to take us here, and invite, let's see, Jackie, do you want to read this? I think this one kind of goes with your vibe of what your hot tip would be.
Yeah, stop writing the script. Don't walk in with a 20-page plan. Start a conversation about aspirations. If you do all the talking, it's a lecture, not a partnership.
For sure. Yeah. Do you want to add something to that?
It's just
Okay.
meeting the partner where they're at.
Yeah. Don't come in with the plan. Yeah. Let's see. Pickle, do you want to read this one?
Sure, the 50-50 split, and we don't mean the tips. The artist must center the science, but the museum must decenter its ego. If the expert doesn't take a back seat, the joy can't drive.
Yeah, we were definitely driven by joy, for sure. Okay, let's see. How about Anya? Why don't you take this one?
Sure. Find your backstage bestie. Identify your internal champions. You need the staff members who can translate community joy into institutional metrics for leadership. And it was joyful to do so.
All right, T, take this next one.
Radical honesty is the best foundation. Be upfront about what the building can't do. Is the floor too slippery for a death drop? Say it on day one. It's not a no, it's a let's pivot.
All right. And then Pickle, I'll have you to read this one.
Give the tech crew their flowers. The silent partners, although audio, lighting, sound, floor staff, are creative contributors. When they're in on the vision, the magic happens.
For sure. All right. And Anya, let's have you take this one again.
Educators turned hype people. Shift your educators to inspiration coaches. Their job is to hold the scientific guardrails while the performers fly.
Nice. Jackie, be on the bus.
Charter bus standards. Success isn't just a high head count, it's about who's on the bus. If families from 3 zip codes away show up, you're doing it right.
Totally. Pickle?
Don't mute the flavor. Don't ask a partner to fit your museum's aesthetic. Ask how your museum's resources can amplify their brand. The clash is where the spark lives.
Perfect. And I'll take this last one since we said it earlier. Don't just book a queen for June, right? Build a multi-year path. Trust takes time. Glamour takes rehearsal, and impact takes commitment. So it's a little bit of the spirit of what was done here. And we're excited to take more questions if there are any out there. I imagine, I forget, I can't see them right now. So we're going to stop the screen share and just want to say thank you to everybody who helped support. There were so many folks that were in the museum and part of the museum that supported this as well as the entire crew from Drag Arts Lab, giving them their flowers for all the work that is done there to support in all the ways, whether it be emotional, financial, physical, whatever it might be. Great. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share so we can see ourselves. And the questions should pop in. Okay, great. Okay, yeah, if anybody has any questions out there in the audience, you feel free to put them into the Q&A and we'll see them here. Maybe while we see if we get any here, I will perhaps ask a question of the whole group to kind of get us warmed up here. You know, building this the way that we did, and this is a question for anybody, you know, there's a creative impact that might have felt different for audiences. And I imagine that there was some anecdotal feedback. But does anybody want to kind of talk about that? Like how did we felt great about this, obviously. There was learning opportunities and, you know, like information sharing and all of that we worked through. Nothing egregious that we couldn't move forward as we obviously did, but how was it received by the community outside of NHM and outside of Drag Arts Lab?
I was really struck by imagine it's like, oh, everyone hated it. No, I was really struck by how I didn't think it was, I mean, I do a lot of drag for kids, so like I'm very kid focused, but like I was really struck by and continue to be struck by the impact it has on children. Like they were really into it. They ask like for recordings and like the parents are like, do you have like the Scorpion song, because my 4-year-old is berating me that I didn't get it on the phone. And like I think that really warmed my heart, that it was that kids were really able to, I mean, we had kids there that watched all three, did it 3 times, that watched all three, like their parents were like, we are ready to go home, but like they're insisting that we watch it again. And I was just like really moved by that, because it was like 40 minutes, like, and these were like little kids just like sitting through it. So I think the positive feedback from the kids really resonated with me.
Yeah, and I think that's an important note, is that this was entirely free to the community. So yes, a kid and their family could sit there 3 times if there was space and go to all 3 shows and also enjoy the resource fair that was happening just outside. This was part of a day where we had other community partners present and engaging the theater, which is this multi-use space that's in there with this, you know, gorgeous floor for performance and theater seating, but also like be outside and learn about what's going on in there. We had a like insider question that somebody had put in the chat about, just wanted to ask, was the floor too slippery for a death drop? Was a question that came through. It looks successful. I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that.
It wasn't. Kyra did a death drop in the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got that in.
That's great. We do have a question about how often is the show happening? So does anybody want to share? Because the first one was last year in 2025. And then Pickle, a lot happened between that and 2026. And for the next one, do you want to share a little bit about when folks could have seen it and maybe when they might see it next?
Yeah, we ended up collaborating with the county to bring the show, and also the museum came and tabled at the events. We did it twice out in the community. We did it once at a beach house in Santa Monica and once in a little theater in Canoga Park. So that was a fun experiment to do it kind of on the road for different communities. And it helped us shape the show and kind of pare it down and continue to evolve it. And now this year we're focused on like, okay, like let's do it the once and do it really, like we're back in kind of zooming in on like being in the museum and like doing that and just continuing to evolve the show and see what that looks like. So I think it's been such a learning process for me too, of like sometimes less is more, and like learning that and being like, okay, let's do it once like really, really well. Um, so yeah, I think it we hope to return in June and do it
Do it
then.
again. Yeah, and we will do it. Somebody had a question about funding and the grant. Was it a part of the museum's regular budget? This was a true partnership, and I want to say and give Drag Arts Lab and Pickle's ability to just kind of like work that magic. This is a program, essentially a partnership, that's something we have internally, called Partners in Commons, the theater space. We, as community engagement, are given the bandwidth to put on programming that our partners pitch in this space several times per year. And that allows our partners to have a place to come land, maybe a program that's outgrown their spaces. But in Pickle's situation, it was like, what can we create together, right? We've got the museum, the space, we have partners that'll come out and do the resource fair. We have the furniture for that. So we used a lot of that, our budget, and we kept us do the museum's day. So while the rehearsals happened after hours, because there was programming happening that stretched a little bit of T's team and some of the other teams, we were able to kind of keep our costs down of like not having to expand regular museum hours in terms of like security and all of that. So it made it happen for us through that lens, is our staff time to help Pickle do everything they need to do for the creative part. But Pickle, you did a lot of fundraising for yourself, right? Because artists need to get paid and partnerships in order to kind of make it happen.
Yeah, I think that, and this is a funding model that I've tried with a couple partners and it's been successful, I think, is that like we got a grant from the county, from like a county supervisor, and a grant from I think the city to do the actual like the artist fees and the development and that creative work. And then we of course relied on the museum's infrastructure, which is so valuable. So I think that by kind of like taking a little bit of responsibility for our own costs, it helped empower the partnership in a way that I think is really valuable, where it's like the stakeholders, we were really partners in it because we both were allocating the resources that we had available to us to like make this project happen. So I think I am very encouraging, like when I talk to other artists, to like find third-party funders that really can make it less like about like it. I think it puts a little bit, it takes a little bit of the strain off the relationship of like, and it empowers us as artists to be like, yeah, we're making this happen. We're doing the steps that like we need to take to get what we need. And a lot of third-party funders were enthusiastic. There are grants and there are resources, and it's been a successful model for us.
Yeah. There's a new question in the chat that just gets me so excited. Would you ever consider making this a seasonal or ongoing program at the museum? It is to a certain extent that it's yearly. On a smaller scale, though, they're saying with a different focus for each show to go even more in depth into specific topics. I could even see this as a video series. Thank you. Installation of, it's a lot of creativity rolling, but that sounds fun.
Yeah, I think that like that, it really, again, like I'm not a video artist, so like there, like if it were like there are drag performers that are like, oh, like social media and don't like know how to do that. So I'm less focused on that. But I think the way we've been thinking about it in sort of that way is like we're really focused on the back burner creating the album of the show, sort of like the musical album, and that's like been a very slow development of like, how can we down the road, how can we incorporate the museum into that? Like, how can they partner on that as well? And like, I really see it as that like kind of music, because kids are really like responsive to the music itself. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be really cool to do that. It's like a lot of work, but 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 yeah, and the show continues to evolve, and we continue to like this year the butterfly song, the first time we did it, she sang a Selena song and it was awesome. But this year we really got to work with that drag artist and mariachi musicians, and we wrote an original song that I am so proud of, and it's in Spanish, and it's this really she's so good at it. It's like really comes from that artist, so it continues to evolve musically as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's some great questions in that are coming through, and one of them feels really good. If you're welcome to stick around, if you'd like to ask this, but I think it was a really lovely question. If you could think back to maybe that first one, how everybody felt, and anybody can answer, when the curtains closed at the end of the final Pride in Bloom show from 2025. How did you feel? Or what did you feel when it kind of was like we delivered?
I can answer that for myself first. I just felt really proud of what came out of this event. I think it was the most beautiful manifestation of everyone's hard work. And for those folks and guests that came up that like Pickle said had seen every show because their child was just so in love with that, and then to come outside and create in our resource fair their pronoun pins or just celebrate with everyone that was outside. It was just incredible to have folks come up and say like I didn't know that this could happen. Like we didn't know what we were walking into today, but we are so glad that it happened and that it's happening here at the museum. We've never envisioned the museum as a place where we could come and see ourselves like in this lens, and we're so happy to be able to do that and to do it together.
Anyone else? Feelings?
Yeah, oftentimes with big projects, like I'll like get to the end of it and I'll feel exhausted and drained, and I'll feel a little bit like oh, I was like kind of working the hardest, so I'm like exhausted. But at the end of this, and I think it speaks to the partnership, I felt really supported. I felt really like our team felt really supported. I did not feel like, oh, I'm working the hardest here. Like we're with like it felt like everyone was exhausted in a really positive way, and I felt really supported. And it was I remarked to my board because we got dinner that night. I was like, usually I feel like drained, and I don't. I was like, I feel like it's the beginning of something. It didn't feel like the end. It felt like the beginning, and it felt manageable, and I felt really I felt really supported and invigorated.
Anya, it looked like you wanted to say something earlier.
Oh yeah, I'll just say my team and I just felt full of joy, just like unadulterated joy, watching it come to life and seeing the guests responding to it and seeing it be wrapped into the resource fair, and just like felt like a true celebration. So
P, your team probably literal curtains closing.
Yeah, I know, and I think I speak for my full team. I felt very proud and also tired because, like Pickle said, we did 3 shows that day. And I think it was remarkable to get to see the audiences that we pulled and how everyone sort of responded. But I think it was a combination of those 2 things.
That's great. Yeah, I think I echo everyone's thoughts of that day of just when we started this work of community engagement about stepping aside and putting others before the museum's aspirations. I don't think anybody ever could have dreamed up what has happened with Pride and Bloom, and even just with the relationship with Pickle. It's been lovely, and it will continue to be lovely. I think Pickle, you and I have talked about like that the museum felt yours, like it was yours, and that's just like the ultimate goal of not only being seen, feeling seen, but just being welcomed in that way. This is your natural history museum, right? It's yours. And we hope that the relationship will continue in that way, and just super grateful for the partnership. There are so many other amazing questions in the chat that we didn't get to. I'd love to talk about, but yes, you can adapt for a university is a question. Yes, our audience was families, but we didn't know the kids. Pickle, I don't think you had said that you didn't know the kids were going to be that, but I think that the spirit of the show is that anybody could see themselves in there, whether you self-identify within the community or not, because it was a good performance and there was good information, and the words, the music was hugging you in every way and shape. And I think people felt that the joy that you all put into it was on stage for everyone to see. So thank you for all that work and for helping to build a more inclusive museum with shared authority. That's the ultimate goal of the Natural History Museums. So thank you so much. We're over time. And just appreciate you all and everyone who has stuck around. And it was an amazing program. So thank you.
Well, and thank you so much to all of you for taking the time this afternoon and sharing all of these innovative ideas. It's so inspiring, and I'm sure the CAM community got some takeaways today from this that hopefully will help them in their own spaces, and definitely have learned from your experience and your expertise. So thank you for being here. And just a reminder, there's 2 more Lunch and Learns left for this series. One is going to be on July 30th, and the other is on August 6th. So please go to the CAM website and learn more about those and register. And thank you again to the speakers. We really appreciate it. And everybody have a wonderful rest of your day.